has the right to look for warrants at all. So where it says, guarantee that all Canadian Security Intelligence Service warrants comply with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it presumes that the warrants should continue. Now the warrants that CSIS got access to, and again, let me just back up and remind people, I said there's 5 parts to this act. It was in part 4 that CSIS and its role and traditional understanding of the limitations of its role was radically changed. When CSIS was created, the goal was, and this was after the RCMP burned down the barn where the FLQ planned to have a meeting, and so they thought, oh dear, we need intelligence gathering that doesn't blunder out and burn down barns. So they created the Canadian Security Intelligence Service specifically to be intelligence gathering only. That CSIS would collect the intelligence and that they would then hand over to the RCMP to do those things that were legal. What C51 did for the first time was give what security experts call kinetic powers. So instead of just collecting intelligence, under the C51 Anti-Terrorism Act, CSIS agents are empowered to disrupt plots. In other words, they are allowed to take action. And one of the ways in which they can take action includes that they're allowed to break laws of foreign countries. They don't need warrants for that. But if they intend to break a Canadian law, they need to go to a judge and get a warrant. Now this is where I'm alarmed about the fact that the Green Paper from the new government refers to making sure these warrants are charter compliant instead of really going at the root of the thing. Should CSIS agents be running around trying to disrupt plots? Should we put them back in the box they were in intelligence gathering only? Is that not a question open for people for commentary? Because again, up until C51, CSIS agents only, and CSIS as an organization, was about collecting intelligence. Now, what C51 did was say that if there are, this is part of the CSIS powers, if there are reasonable grounds to believe a particular activity constitutes a threat to the security of Canada, the service may take measures within or outside Canada to reduce the threats. The measures shall be reasonable and proportional in the circumstances having regard to the nature of the threats. The service shall not take measures to reduce a threat to the security of Canada if those measures will contravene a right or freedom guaranteed by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, or will be contrary to Canadian law, unless the service is authorized to take them by a warrant. Now, the constitutional law and the security law experts with whom I work most closely have written a book on C51. You can find it in libraries. Their names are Craig Forsees and Kent Roach. Kent Roach was the lead lawyer in the Air India investigation. Craig Forsees worked with Air. The two of these lawyers and academics have worked extensively in the area of public security. And they were of the view that this kind of provision actually put Canada at greater risk of security problems. So it isn't a case where C51 made us safer, and then a bunch of people who are civil libertarians objected to it trampling on the rights of Canadians under the Charter. That's the frame that Harper wanted it in, so that if you cared about protecting the rights of Canadians and protecting our charter rights, that would put you in opposition to keeping us safe. Whereas at one and the same time, according to many experts who testified in Parliament when C51 was going through the House and through the Senate, C51 made us less safe. One of those people was an MI5 agent from the UK who was on a secondment with Canada and was able to speak at the Senate. His name is Joe Fogarty, and he described C51 as, quote, a tragedy waiting to happen. He did not believe that the judge issuing these warrants was going to, that this was going to be healthy for Canadian security. And his number one critique was that the various security agencies in Canada had no coordination and no oversight. So, for instance, the RCMP, and he used this as an example in his testimony to the Senate, he knew of current cases where CSIS knew the RCMP was chasing after the wrong people, thinking they might be terrorists, and didn't tell them they were wasting their time. And similarly, where CSIS knew there was a group of radicalized people planning an attack and didn't tell the RCMP. actually entrenched in silos that concretize. There's nothing in C51 that told any of our security agencies, and there are a number of them, that they have to work with each other. So before I go into that list of the agencies and whether they work with each other, I just want to go back to this issue of the warrant. I mentioned Craig Forsyth and Kent Roche. They describe the section I just read aloud as putting Canada in this bizarre situation that we would be the only democracy on earth that had a provision to allow a warrant for constitutional breach. And that, I don't believe, is properly described in the paper the ministers have distributed. To say we want to make sure that CSIS warrants are compliant with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms presumes they have a right to seek a warrant. Now, what's wrong with seeking a warrant if you want to break Canadian law or violate the Charter? Well, we do have some fairly draconian legislation that we're used to from the post-9/11 era security legislation, which created the opportunity for arresting people for preventive arrests under something called security certificates. Now, when they brought that in, security certificates mean, of course, you can't really have an open court and say, Joe Blow, we think you're about to become a terrorist, and we're hauling you into court, you have the right to a lawyer, you get out on bail. No, security certificate arrests require keeping the person you think is a danger, and you have under surveillance. You have to keep them in the dark till the minute you nab them. That's the essence of a security certificate. Because that violates some fundamental understanding of the rule of law and how people who are arrested are entitled to be treated, the previous terrorism laws in Canada created a public interest presence in the courtroom. So you have somebody there on behalf of the public interest, not on behalf of the offender because they're not informed, but a security certificate requires the presence in court of someone arguing for the public interest, not C51. So for the first time ever, we have a provision that violates the fundamental principles of respect for the rule of law, respect for the Charter, where a judge sitting alone on a federal court bench, one judge alone, with no publication of the results of a decision, can give a warrant to CSIS to do something that both either violates the Charter or breaks Canadian law. The provisions, just because you probably haven't read C51 in a while, the limitations on what CSIS officers can do under C51 are quite extraordinary. In taking measures to reduce the threat to the security of Canada, the service shall not, so these are the limitations, A, cause intentionally or by criminal negligence, death or bodily harm to an individual. B, willfully attempt in any manner to obstruct, pervert, or defeat the course of justice. That's willfully attempt. If you do it accidentally, I think you're okay. C, violate the sexual integrity of an individual. Now, why on earth would you imagine that you need to put in law these limitations on what a CSIS officer can do? In any case, going back to what Jody Wilson-Raybould and Ralph Goodell have signed off on, they're asking for Canadians to provide their input into this question of what sort of warrants should CSIS be allowed to get to ensure it doesn't violate the Charter. I'm planning, and my concern is that we actually undo this piece, that CSIS has the right to disrupt plots. It should not be CSIS's job. Now, I think we're strengthened in that because CSIS recently, as you can see, was found guilty of illegally hanging onto metadata that they have no business hanging on to. So this is a good time to be put CSIS back in the box it was in and keep a sharp eye on them, I think. But let's go back to what the government has also proposed. I brought a copy of Bill C52. This is a bill I don't see any reason not to support it. It creates, for the first time, a system similar to what they have in the Parliament in the UK, which is a committee of parliamentarians to be called the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. And this is to provide actual oversight of what security agents and agencies are doing in Canada. So this is the National Security Intelligence Committee of parliamentarians, has a mandate to review all aspects of security operations by various entities in the Canadian government. And the mandate of the committee, again, the actual language used is any matter related to security or intelligence that a minister of the Crown refers to the committee. It just in rough form, I won't go through this in any detail, it's pretty straightforward. It creates a committee that includes some senators, most of members of Parliament, appointed by the minister. All of them have to go through rigorous security checks and be prepared to maintain confidentiality with state-level secrets. This has worked in the UK. We did hear from UK parliamentarians and UK security officials, such as the one I just mentioned, Joe Fogarty, that in the whole history of the UK Security Commission Parliamentary Committee, no opposition member, no member of Parliament had ever breached the security of this committee to blab about anything going on in security operations. Now, what's the difference between oversight and review? So let me just go through some of the agencies, because this is another part of what the ministers have asked for Canadians to advise them, is the duty to keep Canadians safe, to deal with counterterrorism, ministerial oversight. But they describe in this document, which I hope you'll find online if you want to write a direct brief to them. Otherwise, I'll take all of your comments here and make sure they're included in my report. But there are a lot of security agents and agencies and institutions in Canada. Obviously, CSIS, I've been talking about the Canadian Security Intelligence Service quite a lot. There's also the RCMP. There's also Canadian Border Services agents. They have a lot to do with security. It was Canadian Border Service agents who decided to deny entry to Canada to a Green Party French member of the European Parliament, José Bové, who tried to put in Montreal. And I was in touch right away with Minister of Public Safety, Ralph Goodale. It appeared very clear that this was entirely on the initiative of individual border security agencies, but they didn't like the cut of his jib and they were going to reject the European parliamentarian of Canada. So, Canadian Border Services Agency, as well as the Communications Security Establishment Canada. CSEC is an odd one and is a metadata collector. It collects millions of downloads. So, which one of these have reviews and which have oversight? The difference between the review and oversight is important because until we create this parliamentary committee, none of Canada's intelligence agents and agencies have any oversight. There had been oversight of CSIS in an officer whose job was to review everything CSIS did on a day-to-day basis to report to the Minister of Public Security. That function was removed in Omnibus Bill C51 in fall of 2012. They said it was a cost-cutting measure because who needed someone doing oversight? Because we have the Security Intelligence Review Committee called CERC. So here it's very important to understand the difference between review and oversight. Oversight is knowing what are they up to right now today. And review is let's have a look at the end of the year and review their activities. So the Security Intelligence Review Committee, CERC, provides an annual report. Now, the Canadian Border Services has no review annual oversight. The RCMP have the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission, but it's largely toothless. It doesn't have powers to subpoena. So the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission, which used to operate under the name of the Public Complaints Commission of the RCMP, the name was changed in legislation not too long ago. But the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission, and it's the last outgoing candidate under its previous name was someone named Paul Kennedy, who was head of the Public Complaints Commission of the RCMP. He begged for, as this legislation was going through changing its name, that his ability to do investigations and review include the power of subpoena. Some of you may remember Zach Ridelli. And that Zach Ridelli, in the fall 2005 election, decided to put out a press release that he was, small world, investigating Ralph Goodale, now the minister responsible for oversight of the RCMP. And quite a lot, I mean, Paul Kennedy found he did a report on this issue, but he found that Zach Ridelli's press release violated our not have done so in an election. There were all kinds of hurdles that Zaccardelli left over. But Zaccardelli had received a promotion and is now working in Rome for Interpol, or at least he wasn't when Paul Kennedy did the review of the citizens' complaint to the RCMP. Because that investigatory body to do reviews of RCMP activity had no powers of subpoena, they could only ask Zaccardelli if he would come and explain his actions. He declined to do so. So it's a rather large problem. In any case, this is the sort of the array of agencies. The Communications Security Establishment Canada. It's a very strange name because it uses a bunch of nouns and there really aren't any adjectives in there. Communications Security Establishment Canada. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS. The RCMP. Canadian Border Services, and of course the Department of Defense has its own security operations and intelligence gathering as well. So, with no oversight in the past, nobody knew in any one of those agencies what they were doing day to day. Now, I don't think it's adequate myself just to create the parliamentary committee. I think it's a good idea to have the parliamentary committee, but you need former Justice to the Supreme Court, John Major, who actually was the judge who ran the Air India inquiry, what he recommended to Parliament was that you have something like an intelligence czar. You have one functional person with an eye on everybody. Because he said, having gone through the Air India inquiry, and I don't know how many of you remember the Air India, if you remember the event, I don't remember the results of the inquiry. What the Air India inquiry found was that when you look at the array of who knew what, the RCMP had information about some of the plotters, CSIS had information, local police had some information, but nobody was coordinating and connecting the dots. What John Major told the parliamentary committee, which I found quite profound, is that I can guarantee you that if this law passes as is, C51, you will put firmly in place, in concrete, the things that we recommend must never happen, because we said you need to make sure that people are talking to each other and forced to do so. He said, I can promise you, and I thought this was amazing, he said, it's human nature. CSIS will not want to share information with the RCMP. The RCMP will not want to share information with CSIS. Now, CSIS under C51 also got the right to give someone that they suspect of wrongdoing or with whom they want to have embedded in a terrorist operation. They have the right to give them immunity from prosecution and immunity from ever having to testify. But there's nothing under C51 nor under what the current government is recommending to force CSIS to let the RCMP know. So you can easily imagine RCMP resources going to track someone that they go to arrest only to find that they have a get-out-of-jail-free card that CSIS gave them. You also could have, which is quite likely given what we know about having people be infiltrators or getting someone to turn who's within a group, you could easily have someone who was working with an RCMP officer or a CSIS officer and have one or the other agency tracking the activities of someone they think is a criminal who's actually another intelligence service agency. Now, will the parliamentary committee be able to force oversight of these agencies? Not without more than what's here now. So C22, creating a committee is a good idea, but it doesn't go far enough. Now, where else does this not go far enough? One of the things they talk about in C51 was a term that's never been defined and which doesn't make any sense, but which the public consultation documents from Goodale and Wilson-Raybould gloss right over. And this is, again, this was a 5-part act. I should have walked through all 5 parts, but the parts I'm going to talk about now are in part 3, which have to do with dealing with the promotion of terrorism through websites. That's the easiest way to understand it. And it's bizarre that they defined terrorism for purposes of the website in a way that it has never been defined in law before. So what they say here in Part 3 of C51 is every person who, by communicating statements, knowingly advocates or promotes the commission of terrorism general. This is the problem. All the legal experts looked at this and said, what is terrorism in general? Why not terrorism offenses and leave out in general? And then, other than an offense under this section, while knowing that any of these offenses will be committed or being reckless as to whether these offenses will be committed as a result of such communication is guilty of an indictable offense. There are a lot of problems with the way this was put forward, but terrorism and terrorist propaganda is defined again as promoting the commission of terrorism offenses in general. Terrorist propaganda means any writing, sign, visual representation, or audio recording that advocates or promotes the commission of terrorism offenses in general. So I felt, looking at this, it's quite common for people in sort of pop culture to have a poster of Che Guevara. That's a visible representation that could be conceived as promoting terrorism in general, or the graphic sign of a fist. And there are a lot of things, because this is such a vague section. So, and unlike, by the way, getting offensive things off the internet always poses some charter rights and freedoms, free speech issues and free expression issues. But we have some experience with this because we have such laws to get hate speech off the internet, and we have laws to get child pornography off the internet. But in those cases, there are exclusions for private conversations, and there are a number of statutory defenses. Under C51, there's no exclusion for private conversations, and there are no statutory defenses. So the concern here is, what if you are someone who is in proximity to someone that you think is becoming radicalized? And what if you want to engage them in a conversation, a private conversation, to stop them from being further radicalized? This provision was identified by a number of the witnesses before Parliament as one that could discourage, put a chill on, say, someone in a, and not to be Islamophobic about it, but let's face it, we know that there's radicalization happening within some communities at mosques. You want people in the Islamic community to be able to reach out and talk to someone who's misinterpreting the Quran and get them to understand and become less radicalized. This provision, because it's so vague, could actually create a fear, and a reasonable fear, that you could be arrested and put in jail for communicating in private about such offenses. So what worries me about the document from the government, the new document, is it says, it is now a criminal offense for a person to knowingly advocate the commission of terrorism offenses in general. Now, I would have thought at this point they might have said, we're asking for your opinion as to what does terrorism in general mean. Well, we plan to remove the words in general because they've created a great deal of confusion. So, not to go on too much longer because I do want to open it to questions, but just to give you the conclusion from Wilson Raybould and Raphael. Again, there's a lot in here about no-fly lists and how to know if somebody should or shouldn't be on a no-fly list. There's parts in here that I think are really deliberately intended to mislead Canadians into spending time in an area which is no longer a threat, which is that peaceful protest has been excluded before we passed C51. We got that amendment. So that acts that include nonviolent civil disobedience are not included in the range of things that would provoke an investigation for terrorism. But they spend time on